Order. We have no questions. Secretary of State for the Home Department. We start with question 1 for Felicity Buchan.
Number 1, please, Mr. Speaker.
Home Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I answer the question and come straight to it, can I just join you in paying tribute to PC Keith Palmer in the way in which you did earlier on? Keith was a brave officer, dedicated to his work, and we will always remember him. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I would like to group this question with questions 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Following last week's meeting of the Crime and Justice Task Force, chaired by the Prime Minister, the Government has doubled the size of the Safer Streets Fund, which will go towards neighbourhood measures designed to improve public safety and protection.
Knife and gang crime is sadly an issue in my constituency, but at the same time, 2 police stations in the north of my constituency are under threat. One at Notting Hill Police Station, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is planning to sell. He closed its front counter a couple of years ago. And the other police station on Lancaster Road, the lease is due to expire. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that given this government's huge investment in the police, we need physical police stations in London and in the north of my constituency?
Well, my friend is absolutely right, and actually I'd like to pay tribute to her because she's an incredible constituency MP, and I've spent time with her myself on patrol, where she has joined me too, very much to back the police and support the police. I'm incredibly disappointed in what she has said about police stations closing in her constituency. It is a fact that they are a vital lifeline to protecting communities and the public. And of course, she will know that police and crime commissioners are elected to be accountable to the communities that they serve. And with that, they also need to be a strong voice when it comes to fighting crime and dealing with, as my honourable friend has rightly highlighted, the issue of knife crime, drug crime, and also attacks on young people.
Let's go to Ian Levy. Ian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, I oversaw the temporary creation of a mobile police station in Blythe Marketplace. This was very well received by the local residents and retailers in the town, as well as being supported by our local fantastic police force. However, a more permanent fixture, as well as the installation of CCTV, would be welcomed by all. Would my right honourable friend support me, the police and the residents of Blythe Valley in our endeavours to create a safer environment for all?
Well, my honourable friend, Mr. Speaker, is absolutely right. And can I commend him? I mean, he, again, is a tour de force locally, giving strong voice and representation to safer streets and safer community, and again, backing the police. And he is right to work with the police locally to make sure that more community support and safety measures come in place. I'll support him and work with him whatever way I can, and he will also know that when it comes to the funding for these schemes, the money is there from central government. Police and crime commissioners, Mr. Speaker, I would urge all police and crime commissioners to step up to absolutely make sure that they tap into that funding to make sure these measures are coming in place.
Nicky.
Question number 3, Mr. Speaker.
No, it's just straight in.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I also associate myself with the remembrance today of PC Palmer and the other victims we lost on that day? I remember coming out of Westminster Tube at exactly this time, that 4 years ago, and saw the aftermath of that dreadful terrorist attack. Mr. Speaker, I welcome the reopening of the Violence Against Women and Girls Call for Evidence, which I believe now closes this Friday, the 26th of March, and I would encourage as many people to have their say as possible. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that it is vital that we listen to victims of violence and all women and girls to really understand their experiences in their daily lives, so that we can ensure that the strategy that the government finally introduces does tackle violence, harassment and abuse of women and girls?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right, and I would like to echo her calls to continue the encouragement for people to respond to the survey. Mr. Speaker, we've already had in excess of 135,000 people write into the survey since it's been reopened. But there's a fundamental point here. By having people join that consultation, to join that public survey, we want their views, because their views matter. but also their personal experiences matter, and it's personal experiences and insights, whether or not you've been a victim, which is always a terrible, terrible thing, but also if you've interacted with this system, and it could be the criminal justice system, or it could be victim support services, or it could be the police, it could be any aspect of the system, that comes together so that we can have the right type of approach that gives voice and also gives strength to the type of policies and the legislation that we bring forward.
Let's go to Rob Buffler. Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the past year in Aylesbury Vale, robberies have fallen by 35%, and many more criminals have been brought to justice for violent offences. Will my right honourable friend join me in congratulating the superb officers at Thames Valley Police's Aylesbury Police Station for these achievements? And can she tell the House how her department will ensure that those officers can continue to keep my local community safe, especially for women?
Well, my honourable friend absolutely will know of and has heard me speak of great praise to Thames Valley Police for their incredible work, dedication, and there are many examples that we have spoken about in the past as well. But he's spoken about Thames Valley Aylesbury and their own work in reducing crime within our communities, and that is very much down to great leadership, no doubt about that. It's down to resourcing, the money that government is putting in place, the new police officers, the visibility, the money that goes into crime reduction, the surge funding that has gone in. So I absolutely stand with him and also with his local officers that are doing outstanding work.
James Sullivan.
Mr. Speaker, many of my constituents in Bracknell have contacted me recently to express concern about antisocial behaviour. Yeah. This includes nuisance neighbours, drugs abuse, speeding cars and general disorder. Given that the government has a responsibility to safeguard the law-abiding majority, could my right honourable friend please confirm what's been done to curb it?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right, and knowing his constituency from previous visits as I do, and obviously knowing the way in which the police work locally, we absolutely stand with them in terms of our determination to stamp out criminality, but also antisocial behaviour, the things that blight communities. And with that, of course, we stand on the side of the silent law-abiding majority. No question about that whatsoever. And of course, the funding that we have seen, the more police officers that he has, and within his force and his constituency, along with the money for Safer Street funds, will absolutely go a long way to delivering for his constituents.
Let's go to Robert Logan. Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recently, gangs of bicycle and car thieves have been targeting the High Peak, travelling into the area from both Greater Manchester and Yorkshire. Derbyshire Police are working hard to try and tackle this problem, but can I urge the Home Secretary to do more to ensure that different police forces, including British Transport Police, work more closely together to tackle criminal gangs that operate over county lines?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right, and he's right to highlight the blended way in which forces should come together, because county lines cross boundaries. So whether it's British Transport Police, his own police force, or neighbouring forces as well, absolutely pulling together to deal with the level of criminality that he has spoken about. And that is taking place on one of the biggest issues that faces our country, which is county line drug gangs. And he will know, we've spoken previously, of the great operational work that's taking place across our police forces and across our intelligence agencies as well, to go after the criminals that are out there pursuing such high harm crimes.
Shadow Minister Sarah Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Shadow Home Secretary will speak of the violence last night in his remarks. I simply want to say this. There is never an excuse for violence, and as Shadow Policing Minister, my thoughts obviously are with the police who are on duty, and I wish them a swift recovery. I want to also associate myself with the remarks, Mr. Speaker, that you made about PC Keith Palmer, and if I may, I also would like to send my best wishes to the Policing Minister. I hope he continues to show no symptoms of COVID-19 and that the virus was not passed on to anyone working in the Home Office. One would hope that is a lesson to him of the importance of sticking to the rules. Mr. Speaker, thousands of women across the land, including the Home Secretary, have spoken of the danger they feel on the streets and the harassment they have suffered. Now is the time for action. The number of stalking and harassment offences recorded by police has more than doubled in 4 years, 500,000 offences last year, and we know that this is literally the tip of the iceberg, as most women do not report street harassment. Will the Home Secretary work cross-party to introduce a law similar to one introduced in France in 2018 to make street harassment a specific criminal offence?
I say to the Honourable Lady on street harassment, and in fact all harassment against individuals, male and female, but particularly women and girls. Street harassment is absolutely unacceptable. And Mr. Speaker, I've spent some time actually with campaigners who are campaigning to change the law on street harassment, so I'm absolutely committed to working with everybody on this. This will be part of our strategy going forward on violence against women and girls. The Honourable Lady will absolutely know of the work that's taking place with the VOG consultation right now. We're going to build upon that. We're going to look at all the calls that come in to look at how we can have a proper strategy that will formulate legislation to bring about the changes that women and girls quite rightly want to see.
We now have a substantive question to Minister Foster.
Home Office officials meet weekly with the Strategic Migration Partnership in Northern Ireland to discuss intake, accommodation and other operational matters relating to asylum accommodation. This is supplemented with formal monthly meetings with the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, Belfast City Council, the voluntary and community sector, public health colleagues and the Police Service of Northern Ireland.
Let's go to Claire Hammer. Claire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Asylum seekers in Northern Ireland are disadvantaged by a lack of parity in specialist services like trauma counselling and legal advice. But instead of plugging these gaps, this minister seems obsessed with introducing ever more punitive and dehumanising policies in her approach to dealing with people fleeing persecution. We've seen the outworkings of offshore processing in Australia, which cost lives and hundreds of millions of pounds and was a human rights disaster. Will the minister take this opportunity to confirm that the department is not pursuing plans to use third countries as dumping grounds, and will they instead commit to establishing safe and legal routes and housing with dignity those who need asylum in the UK?
Minister Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have to say it's disappointing to hear the tone of the honourable member's question when compared to Belfast City Council being the only part of Northern Ireland to act as a dispersal area. Securing suitable accommodation does rely on local communities taking part. Perhaps the honourable member may wish to reflect on what more councils where the SDLP has a presence could do in terms of action to match her words.
Right, we have a substantive question now to Minister Malthouse.
Mr. Speaker, just before I answer the question, can I reassure the Honourable Lady for Croydon that I did follow the rules, in fact, and I would urge her and indeed all members to get themselves regularly tested on a random basis whether they've got any symptoms or not. Mr. Speaker, the government currently has no plans to misuse the Drugs Act, to review the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971. We keep drugs controls under review, obviously, in consultation with the Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs. But drugs legislation is only part of our wider approach to preventing drug misuse, an approach which includes focusing on education in schools, promoting treatment and recovery, and preventing the supply of illicit drugs.
Let's go to Alan Dorrans. Alan.
As a former police officer in the Metropolitan Police, may I pay tribute to the memory of PC Keith Palmer. Mr. Speaker, the largest review ever undertaken of 349 research studies from across the globe, carried out by the Centre for Criminology at the University in South Wales in 2017, found that safe or supervised injection rooms significantly reduced drug-related harms and dramatically cut mortality. Will the Minister pay heed to this overwhelming evidence and support at least one, or preferably more, pilot facilities for safe drug consumption rooms in Scotland?
Right, let's go to Minister Malthouse. Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I can understand the honourable gentleman's concern, given that Scotland currently has a drug death rate 3.5 times the rate of the whole of the UK, and it's a matter that should be of concern to all of us. I have had extensive discussions with my Scottish colleagues, not least the new Minister for Drugs, about how we could work together to try and tackle this problem. And while at the moment we don't envisage changing the rules to look at safe consumption rooms, there is a huge amount that we can do together. And I would urge him and indeed his colleagues north of the border to look at our groundbreaking ADA projects, which are bringing together police and the most critical partner for Drug Recovery, which is the health service, in 5 areas across England and Wales to really focus on this problem and try and shift the numbers.
Right, we now have a substantive question to Minister Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I will group questions 11 and 12. Removing people who should not be here is vital in order to maintain the integrity of our immigration system. And in particular, removing dangerous foreign national offenders is critical to protecting our fellow citizens. In the year to June 2020, there were 5,208 enforced removals. However, that was significantly lower than in previous years, and that is why we're going to be bringing forward proposals very shortly to reform the system to make sure we can better enforce our immigration rules.
Right, let's go to Richard Holden. Richard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. My North West Durham constituents want genuine refugees to be supported, but also want to see foreign criminals and bogus asylum seekers deported. We've got members of the local Labour Party here spreading scare stories about the plans for the Hassock Fields site. So could the Minister confirm that Hassock Fields will be a secure facility, essentially a Category C prison? It'll have around 80 females in for as short a time as possible, and that recruitment of 200 local jobs will start as soon as possible. And finally, will he ignore the calls of the hard left Labour activists who want to have open borders and would allow foreign criminals to stay in the UK and ensure that those people who have no right to be here are deported as quickly as possible?
Honourable friend is quite right. Where people have valid asylum claims, of course, we should look after them. But where they do not, we should ensure that they leave. The Hassock Fields Centre is indeed designed for 80 female detainees. It will indeed be a secure facility. It will indeed create local jobs, as he says, and only people with no right to stay in the country will be there. And I certainly do join him in condemning the local Labour Party in his neighbourhood who appear to be against proper border control.
Is Bob Blackman there? Bob.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend will well know of the frustration that exists when violent criminals who are foreign nationals leave prison and are due to be deported, only for their lawyers to frustrate the process with last-minute appeals. Will my honourable friend bring forward proposals to prevent this action and make sure those dangerous criminals who are a threat to this country are deported at the end of their criminal convictions?
Well, my honourable friend is quite right. Dangerous criminals, including murderers and rapists, should be deported once their sentence is over. I'm afraid the honourable member is right. We do face legal challenges, often very late in the day, often despite the fact there have been many opportunities to make those claims before, the vast majority of which, well over 80%, subsequently turn out to be totally without merit. And it is for that reason that the Home Secretary and I will be bringing forward proposals in the very near future to address exactly this issue.
Shadow Minister Conor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.